main task, right? To isolate and use a 3D bipedal character rig, free online for Maya or Blender, that has control curves, objects for animating, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to go through some scene setup stuff today. To think about this character undergoing confrontations or obstacles or challenges in an intended film or game or sequence, that it may be a warrior or hero or the foe, monster or antagonist. So you got a variety of different characters to choose from in which you can tackle this assignment. To study and plan to integrate an underlying instinctive creature or animal or mythical beast tendency, right? So one of the things that we're sort of branching out to is my experiences with a little bit of creature animation. So we're going to try and bring that in. But for the majority of this module, I'll stay with bipedal character because that seems to be what the majority of people enjoy. And again, let me know if you hate it and you want to animate a creature, because I will obviously alter it for you, right? For such considerations, to then visualize and plan for a set of actions or motions, to animate 3 separate 3D animations or controller-like moves or cycles to a total of 15 seconds. And it says min. I wonder what Phil means there. So with minimum and maximum time limits, I'm very, very loose about it. One of the things that I want you guys to understand is that quantity never, ever, ever, ever factors into any kind of consideration in the creative industries. It's always quality. To give you an idea, some people put together their demo reels and they go, I only got 1 minute of content, right? It just, you blink, you miss it, right? I need to pad it out. I need to make it like 15 minutes long. And I'm going to put everything in there. I'm going to put stuff in from when I was in comp and all this kind of stuff. And that does not equate to quality, right? What about the quantity of the quality? It just has to be short and sweet, right? It just has to be a minute, right? If you can grab me inside of a minute and make me watch the whole thing from start to finish, you've accomplished your job. I submitted a 20-second, 30-second piece that got me some freelance work over Christmas holidays, right? 30 seconds, right? So I think I've told some of you guys about my anecdote about reviewing demo reels. But some of you guys might not have heard. Have I told you guys about what I do when I review demo reels, or used to when I was in the industry? And I may do again, actually. I may be in a position where I'm hiring and reviewing demo reels. Have I told you that story? Again, I'm yes, I watch for like 10 seconds and move on, right? So yeah, some of you, I've told you the story. Others may not have heard it. Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. So I won't rehash that, right? So I literally just watched the first 10 seconds, right? So your absolute best stuff has to be in the first 10 seconds. Now, ironically, I'm going to put you guys in a little bit of a quandary by saying also your very best stuff has to be at the end of your reel. So that's probably going to blow a few gaskets in your heads, but that's how it works. You got to open with your absolute best work, nothing less than that. And you have to end with your absolute best work, nothing less than that. So it's up to you guys to wrestle with that. I wrestle with it all the time. So the best at the beginning and at the end. Yes, absolutely. And your filler can't feel like filler. So basically I'm saying your best work, followed by your best work, end with your best work. Right? So yeah, there you go. I'm not gonna belabor that. So suggestions to help. You may have a simple, straightforward looking character, but that does not mean the animation is plain. It could be intense, dramatic, full of energy. Aim for lots of appeal and a likable, engaging aspect in everything you plan and key and lay out. When I first started in animation school, I had the 12 principles of animation taped to my light table. So I constantly had it there when I was animating. I recommend and suggest you guys do the same. You will need to develop plenty of research studies, thumbs, storyboards, animatics, etc. before animating. Block out the animation and use pose to pose. Now, I'm not going to be doing the thumbnailing and the grease pencil studies in Maya because I want to get to teaching you how to animate, right? But this is part of the process and also has to be submitted and will be marked. Block out the animation, use post-pose. You stepped on the curves before splining anything. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you exactly what that means. Present all research and development and final animation on the submission date. Fun. That prevails, which refuses to know the power of the other. Where fear is, does not danger also live? And where fear is not, does not danger also die? Where the tiger and the man are two, he may die. Yeah, I'm completely lost. I'm trying to read this expressively and I just got lost. Yet where the tiger and the man are one, there is no fear. There is no danger. For what creature, one with all nature, will attack itself? Okay, thank you, Master Poe. And then it goes on for guidance in the completion of the tasks. Now, yeah, Master Poe. Now, the key thing, whether you're animating for games or for animated films and television, the key thing is emotion. And there have been arguments as to how relevant that is for games animation. And we can still argue about that, but it is absolutely essential. It's been a target of Electronic Arts for decades now to create an emotional resonance from their game characters with their audience, right? It's a lot harder to create that kind of a situation in a game. It does not mean that emotive narrative animation doesn't belong in games, right? So we will talk a little bit about how animation techniques are starting to be, well, not starting to be, they have been for decades. But all the principles of animation are inside game animating as well, right? It's just to the unvarnished eye, it seems like it's not as relevant, but it absolutely is. Oh, do we just have that one assignment? Oh my God, yeah, 100% contribution to the module. Oh, I'm just gonna contradict exactly what I told you guys. Okay, so one brief there. And that I thought that was two briefs, but this is just the module outline. And I won't get into that. We'll skip that. Okay, so that's that. And we're gonna dive in and set this up. Wow, this is still unzipping. But that's okay. I've got other rigged characters that I can show you guys. So I hate it when it does that. It just minimizes the window. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to set up our Maya project so that we can start, let's kind of get ourselves ready for animating. Now, this is something that you guys some of you guys might already be familiar with, but it's really sort of important. And nothing has stressed to me more that I have to go through this yet again because of the fact that some of the creative practice assignment submissions were just the Maya file. I know I berated you guys about it before, so I won't go through it again. So let's start off by opening up. Let's say we've opened up Maya. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go down to my project window because I'm going to set up a project. You know the difference between this and the art is real sorcery assignment. They seem exactly the same to me, and I can't figure out what to do differently. The art is real sorcery assignment. Is that for one of Phil's modules? Yeah, drop it in. Let me take a look at it. If it's for production design, it's probably just the design aspects. Yes, we do sorcery. Okay, drop it in the chat, and I'll come back to it. But I'm just going to continue on here. So, I've opened up the project window. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new project. Right? So I'm going to click New. And one of the things I want to do is I want to tell the project window, Maya, where exactly I'm going to save my projects. Now, I've talked to you guys to death about RAID drive and mapping your cloud drive. So when I go to my W drive, this is actually my Google Cloud. And I'm going to go into my digital sketchbook and my animation folder and my projects and more stuff for my animation demo reel. Quick little note about demo reel strategies. Generalist demo reels don't really work. You actually have to make a separate demo reel for each. So I recommend you have a modeling demo reel, animation demo reel and a visual effects demo reel and keep them separate. Okay, so this is just to set the location. So I'm going to put this location inside that folder. Now I'm going to name the project, right? I just want to see what I named. I think I named the last one Hallway Fight. So I'm just going to call this Spidey and the Kid. And I'm probably going to start this from scratch, just map it all out again. So in this particular scenario, click accept. Oh, it's going through and it's trying to accept it. Maya's not going to save your scene. Okay. So I'm glad we're going over. The last lecture VOD was badly corrupted. Was it? Oh my God. Okay. I seem to be getting better bandwidth these days. Your Maya scene. Ty, I'll come back to your Maya scene in just a second. Okay, let's take a quick look at this. Okay, artist, real sorcery, da, da, da. Practical. So this is developing the look of an environment, right? So I sort of thought so, because production design is all about the design process, whether or not you do sketches, concept paintings, digital mats, it's that kind of a thing, right? Chosen subject, you will then need to plan visual layouts, starting with thumbnails, small panels. Chosen theme. Yeah, this is all the design process that happens before you start animating. Oh, Matthew, if you said the wrong one, just send another one if you find it. That's okay. Not a big deal. Okay, so we've gone and we've set up our project, right? So I'm going to, let's create a new scene, actually. All right, so now that we've created the project, I'm going to set that project. So you can see Spidey and the Kid is there, so I'm going to set that. And what I do straight away is file save scene as, and I'll just call it scene 1, right? And then I'll save it as a MyASCII file, right? So why do I do that? Well, it saves a blank placeholder so that now I can just use incremental save, right? So I'm going to come over to here to file save scene, open up the option box, and I've got incremental scene save turned on. Just a little tip, guys, if you're still struggling with learning the ins and outs of Maya, the big thing that helped me when I first started learning Maya was the option box. So if you don't know what something does, it's like assign offline file. What is it? Click the option box and you can usually sort of figure it out. You know, oh, okay, it deals with referencing. Okay, cool, right? So it just gives you a little bit of a clue. So for example, if we were to come into, you know, modify freeze transformations, what does that do? Open the option box. Oh, okay, I get it. Freezes, translates, rotates, scales. It just gives you an additional clue as to what certain functionality does inside of Maya. So in here, I'm just going to save scene. It'll save an incremental scene for me. Now let's start building our set and getting ready to animate, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, actually, I'll start off with just a character, right? For the time being. Let me rearrange my windows. What happened here? Okay. So now I'm going to bring a character in and we're going to take a look at it and talk a little bit about keyframing and all that kind of stuff. I remember doing this at the beginning of the session, but then stepping back so that I could teach you guys about the joint skin vertice relationship, and then I could walk you through really quickly skinning a character to the human IK rig. Well, now we've done that and we've got a character rig ready to go. So I'm going to come in. I'm not going to import a character in, because what happens when you import the character in, it lives inside your scene. And That makes it difficult if you work on larger projects. So for example, if this is scene 1, I'll import a character in and I animate the character. And then I open scene 2 and I've got to import that character in and I animate that character. Meanwhile, a character modeler changes the character model. Then I go back to scene 1 and I'm like, the model looks different now, but I've animated the older version. I'm going to have to re-import the model in, etc., reanimate the character or cut and paste or transfer animation from one rig to. It's just messy and hairy, right? So instead of importing, we're going to reference. So what the reference does is it says, look, take the model from where it's located and bring it into Maya so I can work with it, but only allow me to do animation changes on it, right? So I can pose it, I can save keyframes, but I can't affect the model. And what ends up happening is the model actually, you know what, I'll just give you a demonstration. That's probably the best way to do it. I've given this demo to a couple of you guys before, so just bear with me, but I think it's important it's an important concept for those of you who haven't experienced referencing. Oh, let me throw that question out to you guys. I'm just taking a look at the class list. You guys know about Maya referencing? Yeah, did it for the last assignment. Okay. Yeah, I don't think the computer programmers have gone through this. So I'll try and go through this real quick. That's that one. What's holding up this window? What is holding up this window? Okay. There we go. Okay, so I've got two instances of Maya. So let's say the Maya on the left is for the modeler, and the Maya on the right is for the animator. Let me rearrange these windows a little bit, just so you can see a little bit of the subtitling down there. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and create a polygon primitive cube, right? And we'll hit F key to frame up on it. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to save scene as, and in here, oh, that's right, let's go out. In here, I'm just going to create a folder for props. Hello. Okay, so let's create a folder for props. I'm just going to put it in the scenes folder. It's a different way of organizing stuff, but that's all right. So I'm going to come in here and save this as, we're going to need one anyway, so I'll save this as prop 1 Smith right. But they're not called Smith rights in this country, but there you go. All right, so I'm going to save that in here, right? So let's say I'm an animator working on scene 1, right? So if I come in here in my animation window and I say, all right, I'm going to import that model in, that prop in, because I want to start working on it, right? So just like, cool, okay. I've imported this guy in. Maya will do one of two things. First of all, bring it in and make it live in the scene, i.e. I can change it and alter it. But it'll also create what's called a namespace. So you see it's got P001 Smith right 1 and then a colon and P cube 1. So what a namespace does is it lets you know, look, this exists in another file and this is the object in the file. It's just a quick handy reference that, to be honest, is more relevant to programmers than to us as artists, but it's just to show that that cube lives in that namespace. Now, let's say I save a key here You're not supposed to save keys on geometry, but I just want to do like something super quick. Let's save a key on here, right? And we're moving this guy around, right? Meanwhile, our modeler comes in the next day and goes, you know what? I'm going to make that change, right? The director wants something more like this. And then as an animator, you walk over to the modeler's desk and you go, you made that change. Man, I'm going to have to create a new scene, re-import that model, and then I'm going to have to reanimate the character, right? So instead, what we can do is go to File, Create Reference. And here's what the reference does. It brings in sort of a stripped down, smaller version of that Smith right? It'll be really kind of low in size because although we can see it, although we can interact with it, although we can actually come in here and edit it if we want, we're not actually touching the original file. The original file will always kind of be there, right? So I'll give you an example. Let me come over here. Now, let's say the modeler makes a change. He goes, okay, cool, I'm going to save this, right? And then let's say I'm in a different part of the studio and I want to check to see if the modeler has updated anything. I'll come over to the reference editor. And again, that's just right under where I got create reference. Underneath that, that's reference editor, right? And in this reference editor, I can grab that Smith right prop and I can say, okay, just refresh that for me or reload it. You can see I can add references, delete references, duplicate them. I'm going to reload it and boom, it comes in with the changes, right? You can also do that. Let me come over here, grab this vertex, move that out. Right? And then I'm going to save this guy. You can also do that from your outliner. I can right click on this and go to Reference, Reload. Whoops, Reference, Reload. And boom, the change comes through automatically, right? So this is how we can keep, we can animate, but keep our character files separate so that if we want to go back and continue to work on our characters, we can. And it won't break any of our animations, which might not seem like a big deal because we're working with one scene, but if you've got 20 shots that you've just animated with your character and you think, oh my God, you know what? That character's nose is too big. It's way too big. I've got to change it. You shrink that nose down, you have to go back and reanimate all those 20 scenes. Whereas if you got this referencing set up, you change the nose in your modeling window and all your animation scenes will update, all of them, right? When you open the scene for the first time, it automatically refreshes your references, right? This is your first taste and a very small taste of how a studio pipeline works. This is dependencies. Now, let's talk about how you hand it in, right? So if I come over to the reference editor, right, and click on this, the Maya scene file is looking for that prop at this location. So if you've got C : my name : desktop : Smith right prop, and then you give me the file. My computer here at home does not have a C : my name : whatever. My computer doesn't have that. So when Maya goes to look for it, right? Let's give a practical example. Let's say you've created this on your. Let me do the most common mistake, right? So the most common mistake would be my name and my documents, right? And then, so you create a props folder in my documents, right? So let's say that's where you've pulled in your reference. Now, when I open the scene file here at my house, Maya's going to go, okay, I know where that prop is. I'm going to go to the C drive and I'm going to look for my name and it's not there. And nothing will load. Nothing, right? That's a mistake that a few of you guys made. No big deal. I just asked you to resubmit. Generally, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to ask you guys to resubmit anything, right? I have to go through this whole rigmarole of paperwork, but I'm trying to take into account, number one, we're in lockdown and the pandemic changes a lot of things. And number two, it's not really about penalizing you for not having the correct structure. It's about marking your animation and your modeling, right? So some of you guys came back at me with new zip files where you've zipped up your entire project folder, right? I'm not too concerned if you zip up your entire project folder and send it to me, and it's looking for C, my name, my documents, and doesn't find it. I'll just unzip your folder in one of my drives here, and then I'll just rechange the pathing. I'll just go, oh, okay, I just move that over to my Z drive, assessments, and marking, right? So go look for it there, you'll find it, right? So I can always alter where it's looking for stuff, right? Okay, so that's how referencing works. And in that regard, I am going to reference in a character, right? So let's come in here. Now I'm not going to, this is my scene 1. I'm going to leave it as my scene 1. So I'm just going to, actually I'll leave that because I might use that a little bit later. So I'm going to maybe group this and call it props because I will alter the original at a later date. And then I'm going to select that prop and I'm going to hide it by going up to display, hide selection, or Control H, right? So there, it's invisible. It's still there. It's invisible, right? Okay, so we're inside of Maya, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go to File and go down to Reference, and I'm going to create that reference, right? Now, I keep all of my sort of characters grouped in one area. So we're going to go and find that. So there, they should be in my characters folder. And I've got a folder for thugs, right? So inside my thugs folder, I've got this scenes folder, right? And so I'm going to open that up. And in here, I've got male and female thugs. And I'm just going to bring in, I'm going to bring in the Herc rig. Right? So we'll reference that guy in. So he's coming through. And there we go, right? Now you can tell that a file is referenced because it's got this blue diamond icon in the upper left-hand corner, right? So that tells you that that character doesn't really exist in this scene. We can use it, but the minute it updates elsewhere, it's going to change in here, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to group it again. This one will be my characters. And I'll create another one for my thugs, just to keep them separate. And I'll probably just take this whole thing and group it as my scene. Now, I like using group nodes to keep myself organized, but there's a lot of export pipelines out in studios that don't like group nodes. So one of the things that I generally had to create a batch script for was when I was done, it would take everything out of group nodes, make sure it all kind of lived at the root, and then it would export everything out. But for teaching and learning purposes, it's good to keep things sort of separate and organized, right? Okay, so in that regard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the resources into the window here for you guys. And I'll get you guys to download those straight away, right? So where are we here? I was in show, no, I was in my sketchbook. Animation characters. Do I have the whole thing? I don't have the whole thing zipped up. Do I? No, I don't. Oh. Okay, well, I'll just send you guys over the characters one at a time. There isn't a dependency. They're all self-contained. So if I send over the Herc rig, you should be able to pop that open, right? The only other, the brilliant thing about these body mechanics characters is they've created them so that you don't need the entire Maya project. It's all self-contained, right? So you should be able to take that, and the files are too powerful. Oh, I can't put it there. Where can I put it? So those of you who I've taught before, how did I get you guys the body mechanics rigs? Did I just send you guys my OneDrive link? Can't remember at the moment, because I'll just do that again. Okay, you know what? I'll just send you a OneDrive link. That'll be fine. So, let me go into my Uni OneDrive and we'll fish it out there. Okay, so this is kind of cool because it'll allow me to link all of the characters at once directly to you, right? So I don't have to faff about with sending them over one at a time. Some of you guys might already have the Body Mechanics rig pack. If not, it's not a big deal. So intro to character. That's A tools. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to set this up by taking the characters folder and so I'm popping the characters folder here into the OneDrive. Now it's probably going to take a little while to upload. So it's not, you can see these flash marks. They're sort of gradually uploading, but I'll send you guys the link, right? So, so in here, anyone with a link. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm just going to copy that link. And we'll paste it in here. So see if you can access that and download those assets. Let me know if you have trouble getting those assets. So how about we do that as the next step. Again, it's not really animating just yet, but we're at 9:45. So download those assets and set your project up in a location that you can access all the time. Am I muted? Hello? Hello? This mic is working. I'm shown as not muted in here. I'm not muted. I'm not bleeding? Oh, I thought by selecting Canadian it had fixed this, but no, it looks like we still have issues. I think it might be this too quiet thing as well, but I've got this locally cranked up to the max, so I can't really get the volume any higher. Oh well. Okay, so try and download those files. Oh, the backup file, I just created that. I was backing up one of the characters. I can't remember what else. You can just delete it. You don't need that one. Oh yeah, so I'll take this time to hit up Ty's question about Maya crashing. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So I think one of the issues might be, let me scroll back up, Ty, to your original question. You were saying that, well, why don't you reiterate it for me? So you're having a problem with Maya? Okay, yeah, send me the error message. Whilst you guys are downloading the character file, I'll let the rest of you guys take like 5 minutes to go grab a drink. I'm gonna go refill my coffee and I'll be back. So I'll be back in a second. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Couple of different things. So uh, if you're using a character file, it might be referencing a plugin or an external tool that's created custom nodes. When Maya doesn't recognize a node, it gives you that error. The current file type cannot be changed. So sometimes it'll work if you change. Sometimes Maya will only want a Maya binary file. It really kind of depends on how the original Maya file was set up. So what is it that you're trying to, you're using OBJ files. OBJ files. Okay. How are you trying to import them? Oh, from Unity. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so, okay, so here's a trick. This is what we used to do back in the day, is we would clean out data off of an OBJ. Here's how we would clean it out. We would import the OBJ into a package that we knew would take it, like ZBrush. I used to use ZBrush for this all the time. Follow me on this one. Import the OBJ into ZBrush, export the OBJ out of ZBrush. ZBrush's exporter sets different data requirements when it exports out OBJ. I know I told you guys that OBJ is just vertex information, which it is essentially, but you can store other information inside an OBJ. And what that process did for me is it would effectively clean out any data off the OBJ, right? So try that. Yeah, I think I've told you guys too that you have to be sort of wary as things get a little bit more complex. Files and file formats and how you open them and import them is not uniform across the board. A good example is when you double click a file or you drag a file onto a desktop icon or you open an application and go to File Open, all three ways of opening a file have different effects. They use different processes inside of Maya and can sometimes lead to unexpected results. The safest way to open any file is to open the application first and then go to File Open. That's the cleanest and safest way to open anything. Okay, sorry, I'm just responding to a couple of chat. I left my stream running. Okay, so wait, my license for ZBrush has expired. Is there others that will do the same? Yeah, try Blender. Try import the OBJ in Blender, export it out of Blender. Something of that nature. Failing that, I think you can edit an OBJ file in a text editor. I'm pretty sure you can. Okay, in the meantime, let's talk about our approach to kind of keyframing this character, right? So let's say we got ourselves set up. I don't have a scenario in my head at the moment, but let's say, let's say the director says, I want the big guy to get into a fighting stance, right? So we'll kind of do that. Now, there are a few different things that we're going to talk about, but the very first thing that I would do if I were to get this from an animation director is I'd also reference in the set, right? So the environment guys are building the set, and I'd be like, yeah, just tell me where it's located. I'll reference it in, and then we'd have the set. But for this assignment, we're going to be building it. So the first thing I'm going to introduce you guys to is Grease Pencil, right? And that is up here in the viewport, right here. Now, this was a godsend when Maya first integrated this. It was originally available with a toolkit that was produced by another famous animator. I forget his name. But what this allows me to do is, depending on the locked off camera, let's do that now. Let's lock off a camera. We can actually draw in the viewport and design our shots, right? So I'm going to leave the grease pencil utility floating up here. Let's lock off our camera. Now, the perspective, top, front, side camera, they're grayed out because you are not supposed to use them. Never animate with the perspective camera ever. And I have made that mistake, and to this day I continue to make that mistake. Maya needs the perspective camera to create a perspective window for you. In fact, I don't know why Autodesk doesn't just hide those from you. Well, it's because occasionally you need to go in there and do stuff. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a camera that I can call my own. There are a few different cameras. They have various differences. The camera is a free-floating camera. The camera with an aim constraint, I don't use as much these days. But how that works is that, I might as well just show you. I'm kind of lecturing you guys anyway. So let's bring in a camera. So we got a bog standard camera here. Let me scale this up. Actually, let me show you the cool way of scaling it up. Because remember how I said scaling data can lead to unpredictable results inside of Maya? So we don't ever want to add scale to any of the transforms we add to objects, but we want that icon to be bigger. So we can come over here and see where I've selected camera. I've gone to my attribute editor, right? There are two ways of interacting with objects inside of Maya. You can either do it in the channel box, which has translates, rotates, scales, and a few things you can adjust, and the attribute editor, which has a folder for translate, rotate, scales, and another folder for a few things you can adjust. They are identical. They're absolutely identical. You can use either or. Typically, modelers use the attribute editor and animators use the channel box. And I'll show you why, right? The channel box allows you to select the translate Y and middle mouse button scroll in the window, right? And I can translate Z, middle mouse button scroll in the window. This is why animators generally tend to use the channel box. But that's just anecdotal. It's not like you can't use the channel box when you're modeling, right? The attribute editor, exact same info, but you can't do it. You have to punch in the values and things like that. So we're in the attribute editor. Also, the attribute editor shows you absolutely every attribute. Channel box shows you kind of, yeah, you don't need to know everything. This is a need to know basis. I'll only show you the stuff that you would use if you're animating, right? But if you want to see everything, it's in here. So I'm going to go down to where I've got object display. Now, object display is how Maya draws that object for you in the viewport, right? So in here, we have something called Locator Scale, right? And I can change that. Now, it's called a Locator Scale because all the helper objects inside of Maya, like cameras and things like that, that are non-renderable, actually start off as a simple locator in 3D space. For those of you guys who don't know what a locator is, it's the absolute simplest object you can ever create inside of any 3D package. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to create a locator, right? And a locator is just this. A point in space marked by crosshairs. That's it, right? It is the cheapest object in terms of calculation time, and it's often called a null in other 3D packages, right? So all objects like cameras, helper objects like cameras, start off as a null or a locator, right? So that's why they should just call this camera icon scale. But there you go, right? So I'm going to scale this locator up to, I don't know, maybe 20, right? And the beauty of it is it makes the camera bigger in the display port, but it has not affected the transform matrix of the camera, right? The scales are all set to 1. It's not a big deal, right? So it's cool. It just makes it a little bit easier to see. So there's the camera. I'm going to come in here. I'm not going to create the, I'm going to skip the camera and aim and go camera, aim, and up because it's kind of the same thing, right? And we will, let's go to the shape node and let's go to, there was something specific about the object display in this setup. I might just have to zoom. And you know what? I'm going to zoom in for the time being because I don't know if it's in the drawing overrides. it's not in the drawing override. Let's just zoom in here, right? So what this does for you, right? That's what we'll do. There it is. Just isolate that camera, right? Go up to 20. Okay, so when you create this, it creates a group for you, and it creates two other sort of objects for you. One is an aim constraint. This is how this works. The aim constraint means that wherever you put that aim constraint, that's where the camera will look at. So this is great for kind of locking onto a character, so the camera always follows that character no matter where it goes, right? The reason why I don't tend to use that is that you can't really do that with a real world camera, and I'm big on recreating real world camera moves, so I use the free camera all the time. So that's the camera and the aim, and then the camera aim and the up is just the addition of an up vector, right? So that means I can move this wherever I want, but the camera will always orient itself towards that up vector, so it won't flip around. You saw when I had it down here and I'm moving this guy and I went up, the camera flips upside down, right? Let's go tear off copy of this panel, and I'll go to, nope, let's go to panel and camera 2. And then I'm going to tear off this panel, that's camera 2, and then we'll go back to our perspective view, right? So if I come over to here and I move that, actually, let's zoom this guy back in, right? If I were to take this up vector, move it down here, see what happens, right? I try to manipulate the camera and it just flips upside down. It's very difficult to control. Now, however, I have used it for camera fly-throughs and flybys and things like that. So as a camera is like, the last time I did it was a golf course. Don't ask me why. This was decades ago, right? So we can constrain a camera to a path and it'll follow that path. And I would have to keyframe the up vector to make sure that that camera stayed level as it swooped in and out, right? So there we go. The different types of cameras. So we got our camera shot. And we're going to set that up. So I'm going to come in here to my panel, and I'm going to go to perspective camera 1. I want to name this straight away, right? So the general naming convention for shots is SH and then 01 with a frame number padding, right? And, well, I'll just leave it at that, right? And now I want to be able to tell the difference between that and my perspective camera, right? So the best way to do this is to go into your shot camera and turn on a few things, right? I'm going to flip over to my channel box. Gives me a bit more screen real estate. So what I like to turn on is my resolution gate, which shows me that my renderer is set to 960 by 540. We're going to need to change that. But it shows me exactly what's going to end up in my rendered image. And I'm going to turn on my safe action and safe title, right? So this visually tells me I'm looking through a shot camera, right? So when I flip back out to perspective to do some work, I know I'm in my perspective mode there, and I can flip back to my shot camera, and I know I'm in my shot camera here, right? So now I'm gonna group that and call that my cameras, and we will bring that into our scene, right? And I think I can pop it up to the top there. Now I'm going to go into my Herc group. Now notice when I'm rotating like this or moving around, well, it's not too bad, right? But sometimes it'll be off axis. A real quick cheat. Let me see if I can do this. Will it do it? No, it's locked dead center on the character, but sometimes when you're off axis and you're rotating around, the character will swing around the screen, right? Because the look at point is located somewhere else, so rotating around the character is really, really hard. The quickest way to reset yourself, and it's not super technical, is just pick an object on your character. Hit the F key, boom, it'll frame up on that, and it's going to use that as the pivot point and just rotate around that. So that's a quick way for me to kind of get oriented super quick. And I'm going to want him to come in sort of Mortal Kombat style. Come into the frame, right? So I'm going to get him to start perhaps off frame a little bit, and then we'll animate him in, right? So I'm not going to lock that camera straight away. Let me just check the beeps there real quick. Seems like a lot of emails dropping in. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything too crucial. I don't think so. It's just IT. Okay. Now, the one thing you want to do is you want to set your camera and then lock it. Because I've set my camera. I'm just like, okay, my camera's set. Now I got to get ready and work on my character. And, damn, I forgot to go to my perspective view. I just messed up my camera shot. So what do? You've got the left and right square brackets on your keyboard. Check this out. Maya remembers every camera move, right? So I'm just hitting the left square bracket. You can go the right square bracket, go forward, left square bracket, go backwards. And it was round about there. Cool, that's my camera shot. I don't want it to move. So I'm gonna grab this camera. The quickest way to do it, you can either select it in here, or you can go View, Select Camera, and it'll select the camera you're looking through, right? And in here, I wanna lock this. There are two ways you can do it. Now, my favorite way is to just hit the S key and store a keyframe. Why? Because if I were to move this accidentally, I can just quickly scrub the timeline. Oh, it didn't work. Why did you not work? Because it should save a keyframe for your camera. Let's try this again. Save the keyframe. Oh, I've got auto key turned on. Yeah, that's right. So if I were to move this accidentally, this is what I was talking about it rotating away from your viewport. And you're just like, what? You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, you can just grab that middle controller, hit F, and then boom, it'll rotate around it. But you're like, I just moved my shot camera. Well, you can just boom, scrub the timeline, and it'll pop back to those keyframes. And as you've just seen, it doesn't work if you have auto key turned on. But I like saving the keyframe on my camera because it gives me the versatility to change the camera if I want, right? So if I need to change it, that's available to me. The other way works, but you have to be absolutely certain that that's your locked off camera. So let's get our guy into place here. And I'm going to select all of my channels here in the channel box. I think you can do this now in the attribute editor as well. But the rotates, translates, scales. I'm going to right click on this. And you can see the right click menu has a whole bunch of options for you. You can set keyframes. You can do all kinds of stuff. The translates, rotates, scales. But for now, I'm going to lock the selected, right? Why won't you let me? I've got the wrong object. So view, select camera. There you go. So I'm going to grab these guys. Let's get rid of the keyframe here, right? So to do that, I can either right click here and delete the key. Yeah, let's just do it that way, right? No, I'll show you both ways. So I can right click here and delete the key, or you can select your channels, right? You can right click, and then you can break those connections. When you break those connections, it'll delete those keys as well. But let's do it down here so that I can explain to you about deleting in any 3D application. This delete here is not the same as this delete here, which is not the same as hitting the delete key. They're not the same, right? So I've done this before in the past where you select that key and you hit the delete key and your character vanishes because you've deleted your character. The right click delete here is just to delete the keyframes. That's it. It won't touch anything else, right? So I'll delete that. Keyframes are gone. You can see that they're gone here in the channel box as well, right? And my shot camera still has keyframes on it. So where did those keyframes come from? In this case, I'm just going to grab those guys, right click, and break those connections. It does the same thing, right? So by breaking those connections, whoops, or by setting a keyframe, I've effectively, or deleting the keyframe, I've effectively deleted the animation, right? So I'm going to undo that because you guys just saw me lock the camera, right? So if I want to lock the camera, I can come over here and go view lock camera. And when it does, is it grays out the translates and the rotates, but not the scales, right? So I can do it that way, or I can come in here, I can grab all of these guys, right click, and then I can lock select it, right? So you can see that it's given me just an indicator here in gray that that's locked out. Now, what you can also do, if you don't want anybody else to touch your camera, you can right click and you can also hide it, or lock and hide selected. I'm always in the habit of just going lock and hide, right? Boom, and they're all gone, right? So no one can touch that camera, right? How do you bring all that back? You go into your channel box again, and we'll come in here and I will go to my edit channel control, right? Because I'm like, oh man, you know what? I locked and hid all those channels, so I can't move my camera, but I suddenly need to make another camera move. So you can come over here. Again, I found that in edit channel control. You can come in here and let's bring those translates and rotates and everything back, right? So here's how this works. It'll show you these three lists, right? And it's showing me the non-keyable hidden. Big list, right? But all you have to do is come over to your rotates, right? Select those guys, go down to your translates, select those guys, and then just move them from right to left. They become keyable and they're there, right? But they're locked. And then you've got locked in here, but we'll just leave them locked for now. So that's the channel control. I know I've just thrown a lot of stuff at you, right? But it's all sort of important, and I'm Twitch streaming it so that you guys can reference the video a little bit later as well, right? Okay, so we've locked our camera now, and we're ready to go. So now I'm going to bring back my grease pencil tool, right? So cool. The director wants me to bring the character in, right? So I'm going to have to do some mouse drawing, so bear with me here. It won't let me export the file as an ASCII only binary. And when I go into Blender to import the binary file, it won't show up on the viewer. Neither will I. Are you sure it's an OBJ? Ty, you're exporting and importing ASCIIs and binaries? The OBJ is not a compiled file format. It should say .obj. Okay, while Ty's typing his response, we'll go back to this. So here's how the grease pencil works. So I'm at frame 1. Now I'm going to add a grease pencil keyframe, which is different from your regular keyframes. And you can tell because it doesn't give you a red line. It gives you a reddish orange line. It gives you this little box tick, right? Now all my tools become available. I've got a pencil, grease pencil, forget what, soft pencil, right? And then we've got an eraser. We can change the color of the lines that we're drawing, and we've got ghosting, right? And then we can import and export grease frames if we want to take it to an external editing package. But I'm just going to pick that grease pencil frame. Oh my God, I hate drawing with a mouse. Ugh. This is so awful, man. I hate this so much. Okay. So we're going to bring our character in, maybe, you know, like this, right? Actually, I want to, well, I'll just show you the functionality of it. So let's say that's our first character pose, right? And then we think about our timing and go, okay, well, how long does it take to step forward? So this is where you do the animator thing. And you get out of your desk and you're just like, and then you try to think, did that take me a second, half a second? How many frames did that take me? In this day and age, you can video yourself to get that movement timing reference. You can see how many frames it takes you to step through. For all intents and purposes, I'm just gonna, or for the sake of demonstration, I'm just gonna go to 10 frames. I'm gonna add another grease pencil keyframe. You can see that it ghosts my previous frame, and I'm going to do the down pose. And he's gonna compensate a little bit. Up like that. And then we can scrub back and forth between the two. So it's a slow step forward, and then a slow rise up to maybe about 25 frames. And then here I'm going to add another grease pencil frame, and I'm going to use a contrasting curve. And he's come up, and he's ready, something like that. I don't know. Right? So the grease pencil tool is not really about making pretty drawings anyway. It's about timing, right? So I'm going to turn off my ghosting, and I'm going to scrub my timeline to see if those poses work. Right? And then what you can do is you can play. Here's a kind of a warning. A lot of junior animators or first-time animators will figure out their timing by scrubbing the timeline. But how do you know how fast that character's moving, right? You're not getting an accurate gauge of time. So you have to press play, right? So when you press play, boom. Oh, it's going like way too fast, right? So there are a few things you have to be aware of when you hit play on the timeline here. Let's go into our animation preferences over here, indicated by this running dude icon. And we need to tell the time slider exactly how fast it needs to go. So we're going to animate at the frame rate of 24 frames per second. And we're going to make sure that when we hit the play button, the playback speed will be, well, let's take a look. It's playing every frame. And then we've got 24 frames per second times 1. 24 frames per second, half of it, 24 frames per second, double. Right? So which one do we need to set this at? Any of you guys know? By the way, Ty, it says elvennight.ma. That's not an OBJ file, that's a Maya ASCII file. Why? Also, Ty, why 24 frames at real time? Just kind of curious as to why you would say play every frame. Oh, I see. No, it's not real time per se. It's play every frame, right? So what this is doing is it's trying to play every single frame as fast as your graphics adapter can handle it, right? So it'll play back my animation at 400 frames a second if I've got an Uber graphics adapter. That's not going to give me an accurate sense of timing. So we have to let Maya know, look, play it 24 frames per second every single frame, right? Not any slower, not any faster than 24 frames per second, right? So when I do this and I hit save and I press play again, right? Now we're looking at pretty much real time, right? See the difference in speed, guys? So it's like step, right? And then, of course, I just want to work on these two poses. So I'll stop this and let's choke up the timeline here. The timeline's really, really long. Now we can do that very, very simply with this slider in here, right? And we can see the extents of our project. Our project goes from 1 to frame 200, but it's only showing us up to 120. And we can change that. You can see the number altering here. Let's bring this all the way down so we're only dealing with, let's just say the first second. A little bit over. Let's say 30 frames. Right? So this gives us a nice tight timeline to work on our animations and design it out. Right? So that's how the grease pencil works, and why you would use the grease pencil is to, again, to plan out your animation a little bit in terms of timing and poses. Right? So that's enough of the grease pencil. I'm going to close out of it for the time being. Any questions so far? Okay, while questions are being typed, I'm going to come over to my panels and I'm going to tear off a copy of this, right? So I'm going to pop this copy up here. If you do it in Photoshop, it sort of defeats the purpose of the grease pencil. Obviously, we can make beautiful drawings in Photoshop, but that's not what the grease pencil is about, right? Because now, what we want to do is we want to grab our character, right? And let me go back to my perspective view. There it is. We want to grab our character and position him where our grease pencil drawings are, right? And to work on the timing of the different poses, right? So I'm going to figure out what I want to do with this animation. The grease pencil timing's sort of off, so I'll probably not stick to it at all, but we'll kind of work on that. I'm just going to walk you guys through setting some keyframes on a character straight off the bat, right? Okay, so now I've got two windows, right? I've got my perspective window where I can zip around and pose the character out, but I've got my locked off camera. So I know that I'm animating to the camera and I can see exactly what the end result will look like. Now, this camera's getting in my way, so I'm going to get rid of it, right? Now, these menu items here deal only with the things that you can see through the viewport. You can see this gray square around that area. So in here, anything to do with the view or show is just dealing with the stuff in the viewport. So I can come over here and go show and find my cameras and turn that off. And the icon is gone, making it much easier to work. It's still there though. I haven't deleted it. And it's not hidden. You can see that the icon is not grayed up, not like what I did with the prop here, right? So notice when I hit it, the prop is grayed out. This is just turned off in terms of visibility in my viewport, right? So let's come in here and set our character up for their first pose, right? So with this, the one thing that I'm going to want to do is to create a shelf for myself so that when I'm getting ready to animate, I can put some tools up there, right? So I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So I'm going to come over and let's create a new shelf. So I'm going to come over to my shelf icon here. I'm going to create a new shelf, right? And I'll call this Spidey and the Kid, S-A-T-K. And this will be for Doug. And I'll create a custom one for Herc, right? So now I've got this sort of blank shelf, right? So what are we going to put there? Well, I'll show you. So I've got that blank shelf ready to go. And again, you can create that over here under the sort of gear icon for the shelves. Right? So let's say we want to pose our character out. I'm going to come in here, right? I'm going to sort of think about what his off-camera pose is going to be. And notice when I grease penciled it, he was stepping into the shot, But slightly outside of that, I'm actually going to move this placement icon out here. Slightly outside of that, he's going to be stepping up. So let's this forward. And then, you know, I've got the left foot forward. So the way the human body works is there's usually a contrapedal twist to counterbalance. And with my controller set to gimbal lock, I've run out of a rotation, right? So I got to be very sort of wary of what my rotations are doing. It's a little bit kind of dangerous. Okay, and we'll do what all kind of animations end up looking like in the beginning stages. They'll be animated with mittens. Oh no, you know what? Let's get. There's not much going on here. Let's get a little bit of kind of finger animation going on. Now, I haven't acted this out, so I don't know what the personality is just yet. I just want to get into the flow here, so I'm just sort of roughing it out a little bit. So I'm going to come over here. I'm not going to do much, but I'll show you some of the inherent problems that we will be facing whilst animating. So a lot of this that I'm doing at the moment is just sort of preliminary. I'm going to need to change the rotate order on that. That's incorrect. Pop over here and where is my... No, not the pivot. Rotate order. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to set the rotate order so I've got a nice rotational axis through the front of the arm. So with that controller selected, you don't have to worry about this bit. It's a bit more advanced, but I'm just going to rocket through it quick. Notice how when I've got that gimbal display mode on, I don't have a rotation axis available to me to rotate this way. And remember, I told you guys that gimbal rotation is the God's honest truth as to how Maya is calculating rotations in the background. So animating with gimbal turned on is probably a good habit to get into. But I can change the order at which those rotations are solved. And I usually just sort of kind of guess until I get an axis that I can work with. So this should give me the positive z-axis. Now, oh, sorry, that's the y-axis. So I want to put the z-axis in the middle, I think. Well, generally, I just scroll through all of those until I find the one that I want. No. I don't want to animate with the positive y-axis as the favored rotational axis. But it looks like those are the only ones the solver is making available for me. Okay, well, we'll leave it at the YXZ. So I've got that rotation available to me, and any kind of twisting motion will cause gimbal lock. I think that's safe because we're never going to twist the arm that way. So that's a good rotate order. I'm happy with that. And it's still early days. I haven't set keyframes yet, so we should be sort of safe with that. Okay. So I'm just posing this guy out real quick. These guys are cool to animate. Love it. Super fun. All right. So something like that. Now, let's say we are kind of, let's get him down a little bit more. Oop. And where's his weight? I got to think about where his weight is. So his weight would be starting to transition over to the other leg. There we go. And I think this guy would be a little bit further out. Yeah, let's do this properly. And the toe would be coming up a bit. Which one's the toe roll? Is it this guy? Maybe it's this guy. That's the toe roll, right? There we go. So something like that, right? So we've got our character posed out, right? Now we got to go and set some keyframes, right? So I'm like, okay, what did I move? Okay, so I've moved the foot, right? Let me turn on the channel box because there's a few principles that I've got to kind of teach you about, right? So you might go, okay, well, now I got to keyframe all the controls that have moved. So I'll select the toe control, hit the S key, but it keyframes absolutely every channel, right? I haven't animated scales. I haven't animated anything else, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to, if we hit Shift W, we'll only keyframe the translates. If we hit Shift E, it'll only do the rotates. If we do Shift R, it'll only do the scales. So that's how you can custom keyframe particular channels. But another good way is to just lock and hide certain channels. Because I just want to hit one key. I just want to hit the S key. I don't want to hit Shift W or Shift E or Shift R, right? So logically thinking about it, I'm never going to take that toe roll and move it. It'll only ever be a rotation. Although when I moved it, that was kind of cool actually. But it's gonna break apart off that rig, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to take the translates and the scales, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to lock and hide the selected there. And oh, it won't let me do that. Oh, because it's referenced. I have to lock and hide it in the original file. But you get the idea. So I can lock and hide those channels so that when I hit the S key, it's not going to hold the keyframe. So we might want to investigate that later. But I'm going to hit the S key. And for now, we're going to store keyframes on everything because there are other problems that arise when you do that. And so I want to kind of replicate what a student or a junior animator, the mistakes they might make, right? So I'm like, okay, the foot, whoa, I've keyframed everything there. And then I'm going to hit the S key here. Did I move that toe roll? No, I don't think so, right? So you can see the problem. You got to go through and you got to remember absolutely everywhere that you set that S key, right? Did I move? I didn't move these guys. I moved this guy, right? And that becomes a huge, huge pain, right? So instead of doing this, let's set up our shelf so that life will be a little bit easier for us, right? So I'm going to make what's called a selection set. Now, generally you do this before you start animating a character. I just wanted to walk you through the process because a lot of people who animate for the first time will just jump onto a character and start posing it and start setting keyframes, right? So instead, I just want to pose my character and hit the S key, right? So what I'll do is I'll come over into my character controls and look for all the controllers and select them here in the outliner, or even better, we can select them here by doing a Marquee Select. Now the problem with that though is the Marquee Select selects everything, right? It selects the geometry, selects joints and all that kind of stuff, right? Although the character has been set up really well that I don't think I can, yeah, I can't select them, and I don't think the joints are available for me to work with, which is cool. The character setup artist did their job, so I can't select the joints and I can't select the geometry, which is really cool. But let's say you had a situation where you are accidentally selecting the character's geometry and stuff. You can always come over here, turn everything off, and then just turn on your NURBS curves. Boom, there's my controls, right? So I can just come in, just select those, and job done, right? So I'm going to do it this way just to be entirely sure I'm only selecting the NURBS curves, right? So with just all of those controller curves selected, I can come over here and go to Create, Set, Quick Select Set, right? It'll go, okay, what do you want to call this, right? So I'll call this Set All and add that to my shelf. So that's a set of all my controllers, right? So cool, right? So I can really easily select all, hit the S key, and everything gets a keyframe. absolutely everything, right? All the bits and pieces. Now, I'll talk to you about the value of this, right? For game animation, you can't do this as much because you got to optimize the animation data. Well, actually, no, not true, because we end up baking all the animation data onto joints and etc. And then we process that joint animation bake data later. But where was I? Yeah, so even though we're saving a keyframe on every single channel, we have to A, trust our character setup guy to have locked and hidden all the channels we don't need. And B, we're just starting out. We're learning animation. The animation stuff that we're doing, it's only 30 frames. So it's not like that all that keyframe data is going to really bog us down. It's not going to. And I'll show you the benefit of lining up your keys when we get in the graph editor. So you can take this one step further by going like this, selecting this, 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 and going through and selecting each of the kind of hand controllers, right? And then I can come in and I can create another set, quick select set. This one's going to be the set of the left arm. Arm and left. Add that to the shelf, right? So if I wanted to just keyframe individual body parts, I can, right? Let's just do a quick one for the other arm, and then I'll tie that into the benefit of a picker page. Nope. I know I could marquee select this, but I generally don't trust the marquee select. I like to make sure I got everything. Right. And then go to create, set, quick select set. And I want to name it the same. I noticed that the naming convention doesn't show up here. So I might change that name to arm and right. Just so I can see what it is. I'm going to right click on here and edit that. So you can edit that shelf icon, and I'm going to change that to arm left. So I can at least read it in the little icon, right? I'm going to change that, save that to the shelf, right? That's cool. I'm just going to leave it at that now. So now I'm going to show everything back again, but my pesky camera has shown up again. So I'm going to come over here and turn off that camera, right? So we're back in business. I'll scrub the timeline and it hasn't changed at all, right? So that's good. Now let's set our second keyframe, right? And I realized actually he's sort of in a crouch pose. It was easier to sort of keyframe that out. So let me instead have him move up. So he's just taking the step forward and he's going to move up, right? So the arms are going to do the switch. Everything is turned green because Maya doesn't recognize the shader. So green and red appear when Maya doesn't recognize the material structure or the shader, right? Your textures are not showing up because Maya can't find them, right? So this has to do with dependency links. So the green sometimes happens. I'll give you an example. So let's say you've got a bunch of mental ray nodes that you've attached and build your material tree out of, and you launch into a version of Maya that doesn't have mental ray, your characters will turn green, bright green. Okay. So I was just rushing that pose, but it's not bad. It's all right. I'm quite happy with that. Now, here's where the arty-farty part comes in, right? So there's a whole bunch of steps I'm missing up until this point. Number one, I don't know the character. I don't know his personality. Number two, I don't know what he's doing yet. I'm making it up as I go, which is dangerous. That equates to a non-genuine performance and a character that no one can relate to and just bad animating, right? So in a situation like this in a studio, I would literally take a good half hour, 15 minutes, half hour, get in the character, figure out what I'm thinking, right? So and here's how important it is, right? So as I crouch down and I step forward, what am I thinking? What am I doing? What's my personality, right? So Am I coming over to just go, to intimidate? Or am I coming up to go and ready for a strike? Or what? How am I doing it? Do I want to attack this guy? Or have I been given an order to attack this guy? Surprisingly, those are different. Those are very different, right? If you have the desire to attack someone, it's very different from having been given an order to do it. And that reflects in the facial expression and personality and et cetera, right? So that's where that kind of comes in. Actually, it comes in during the grease pencil design phase. That's the whole point of it, right? But again, because of the essence of lecturing you guys, I'm going to kind of move forward. So just from a pure body mechanics point of view, he's going to be rising up. Now, when he rises up to take the step, I think it's going to be a slow rise and then a fast down. Like, right? So, something that you'll find interesting, a lot of animators, especially older animators, will make sound effects while they're animating. I used to do it all the time when I was 2D animating on the light table. And generally, it helps you figure out timing, right? So when you walk into a 2D animation studio, it's a noisy place. You'll hear lots of people going, whoosh, whoosh, somebody going, and all kinds of noises. So that's part of being an animator, and that's also part of the enjoyment of being an animator, right? Okay, so right, that's going to be the timing of the step, maybe a little bit faster than I did. So I'm doing the bit. So I'm doing the rise up. So I'll probably give him 8 frames to get there, knowing that that whole step process, I probably don't want to take it more than 12 frames. That's half a second to rise up and then down again, right? So on that rise up, now what I'm going to do is I don't want to have to keep picking my controllers and setting a key and picking my controllers and setting a key. I just want to be able to move my character and have it kind of lock into place. Now there's a couple of things I can do here. I can select all my controllers and set a key. And what that does is it locks everything into place. Actually, maybe I'll show you. Yeah, let me show you the notion of locking your character into place, right? I think it's a good idea for me to make a deliberate mistake so that you guys can see what to look out for, right? So let's say I don't want to use the selection set and hit the S key. I want auto key turned on. Now auto key, what that does is you just need to move to the frame that you want to animate on and just move your character into pose. And then the keyframes will automatically happen. So let's say I take the pelvis controller and I move them over and up. Notice the keyframes are appearing, right? Now, does he go, see, this is where personality comes into play, right? As he's going up, does he go up on a toe, right? Does he like go up? You know? And you could be thinking body mechanics wise, but it's better if you think personality wise. Maybe he goes up just a little bit because he's a pretty heavy guy, right? Now, how far does that foot go up? First of all, let's get him balanced. Like nobody can lift their leg like that. Now I gotta emphasize this. I know I'm a little bit all over the place today in terms of animating and talking to you about different facets of it, but this is really important, right? I see this all the time. Walk cycle where a leg comes up and plants and a leg comes up and plants. You cannot lift your leg. You cannot lift your leg without shifting all of your body weight over one leg. It's impossible. You cannot just lift your leg and plant it, right? It's impossible without falling over, right? Or without having to catch yourself all of a sudden. When you lift your leg, your body weight will shift. Try it. Get up out of your chair, try and lift your leg. You have to compensate by shifting all of your body weight over the support leg, right? I cannot emphasize this enough. It's the #1 mistake that I see in character walk cycles all the freaking time, right? The minute a leg goes up, you have to shift your weight over one leg. It just has to happen, right? Physics-wise, you just cannot transfer your body weight or your body mass without doing it. Okay, so I needed the segue because that is such an important mistake I see all the time. Now, the passing pose, right? Like, does his leg swing way out as it comes around? Or, you know, like, how far is his leg going? That's all the personality, right? So again, I'm standing up here and I'm thinking, okay, boom, and I'm trying to act it out. Like, how would that leg come through, right? This guy's somebody who's combat ready and trained and stuff like that. So every second of every action that he's doing will be balanced and ready for combat. Oh, some of you guys are not watching the Twitch stream. Ah, yeah, okay. I'm just getting out of my chair and acting it out. So you guys can see that when you reference the Twitch stream afterwards. I wonder how I can cheat this a little bit. Oh, I know. Well, it's going to be demanding of my system, but I'm wondering if I can fire up my Twitch stream at the same time. Well, I got you guys. I got you guys till 11. We got 15. I'm just going to soldier forth, right? You don't really need to see me acting it out. I was just getting up and trying to figure out what kind of personality would make that guy's legs swing out. So I think he'd be more like this, right? Now, obviously with the foot in the air, the toe would then straighten itself out. But I also think that it would scoop. It would do a bit of a scooping motion, right? That's kind of more of, it wouldn't in real life, but that's kind of more of an animator's thing, right? And then I want to break all my 90-degree angles as much as possible because nothing screams CG than a 90-degree angle, right? So is my character pigeon-toed, or does he have, I forget the opposite of pigeon-toed, where the toes are pointing outward, right? I think for this guy, his toes would be pointing outward, right? Now I'm going to start the arm swing back. Oh yeah, I didn't change the rotate order on this. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to pop in here, and I've never changed rotate order mid-animating. So this will be interesting to see what happens. So I'm going to change the rotate order. I think it was YXZ, was it? That's what happens. Okay, so will this give me the rotations that I need? We'll probably get some unexpected results. That's okay. I'm prepared for it. Let's just soldier forth, see what we get. And then this would start coming back. His shoulder would start coming back. The twist would start happening this way. But again, when the shoulders twist, I'm acting it out again. When the shoulders twist, would one come up higher than the other? I think so, right? So I'm just twisting it like that. But then this shoulder is, actually maybe they both stay back during the switch. Because this character leads with his chest. Wherever he's moving, he leads with his chest, right? So that looks kind of cool. So maybe his arm comes back, but a little bit slower. You'll get a lot of, you'll hear me talk about a lot of acting terms as well. Actors go through this as well. What body part do you lead with as a character? Do you lead with your chin? Do you lead with your chest? Do you lead with your pelvis, right? But that's essentially what animating is. It's performance, right? So he's bringing his other arm around, but he's leading with his chest. I think he might, when he goes up, the head may come down to compensate. So that's cool. I'm happy with that as a passing pose. So let's see what we get. Now, here's a problem. When you're animating, and you've got spline curves turned on, you can see the motion, and it convinces you that it's good, it's working, it's animating, because it's moving. Kinetic motion does not equal animation. I want you guys to remember that. Simply being able to move stuff around doesn't mean you're an animator. I've run into loads of people in my life who are just like, oh yeah, I'm an animator, I know how to animate. And I go, oh yeah, really? And then they just show me like a sprite icon that they've moved around on screen. I'm like, dude, that's not animating. Animation's an art form. Animation's about characters emoting and things like that. So how do you get quality animation but not be distracted by movement? Well, you use an old 2D animating technique, right? And that's animating with linear stepped keys. And I'll show this to you in just 1 second, right? So let's see what our animation data is doing behind the scenes in Maya. So I've just clicked on select all, and it's selected all my controllers. And I'm going to open up my graph editor. and I can do that here under Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And pop that open, right? Whoa, that's a lot of data. It's a spaghetti strand tangle of curves, right? But I can easily see what's going on because all my keys are lined up. They're all in one place, right? Now imagine, I'm just gonna kind of invent this. It's probably gonna wreak havoc with my poses, but you'll get the idea when I do this. I don't know. I don't like that. Right? And let's say we got a couple of these guys over here, a couple of these guys over here. I don't know, something like that, right? So you got keys all over the place, and it just becomes this huge kind of hairy, tangled mess, right? I mean, it's still pretty clear to read, kind of, but you're getting lost in all these curves, right? Like if you come out here, there's keyframes everywhere. And I say, well, adjust the arm swing. And you're like, oh, what is the arm swing? I don't know, right? So if I undo this back, notice how all my keys are lined up, right? Makes it so much easier to find the pose that you need to fix, right? So I never put in my offsets or anything like that until the very end when I'm ready to start finalizing my animation. I might tweak some offsets or whatnot. What I'm doing here is making sure that I get my key poses working correctly, right? Now, the motion is distracting. So what I want to do is I want to select all of my controllers, right? Which it's done in the viewport. And I want to change the way the curves are calculated. I want to set it to, where are you here? To step tangents, right? And what that means is that the character will stay in the pose until the next one, right? So you get a flipbook effect. Now, when you do this, you're not looking at that smooth motion, you're judging the poses. So suddenly I'm like, okay, yeah, he's got to, when he comes up, he's got to move over a little bit more. You see how this works? It makes it a lot easier to sort of judge whether your animation is working or not, right? And you can use the left and right angle brackets to move from key pose to key pose, right? So I can look at things like, is this arm moving enough? It doesn't feel like it's moving enough. Whereas if I had it splined, right, you'd see the arm moving really gradually. So you'd be like, yeah, it's moving. It's cool. It looks cool. But when I'm looking at the poses, no, the poses here are not extreme enough. They're not, right? So as he's coming forward, in fact, it looks like he's shrugging his shoulder, which is not good, right? So I'm going to say he's actually going to be swinging his arm a bit more forward. And notice, by working on the keyframes, I know that I'm just adjusting those poses and nothing else, right? And I've got auto key turned on. Well, I think this would be trailing back a little bit as this comes forward. And I think the shoulder's coming up too high. So even though I've got the shoulder coming up based on the torso twist, I might actually just lower the shoulder individually. Okay. So let's work on the landing. because we got 5 minutes left. One last thing I want to show you that's a problem for animating. Let's go to frame 12 real quick. So now I always animate the COG first. There are different schools of thought for that, but it's more of an old school kind of thing, right? But the center of gravity, it's really important to get that right, and especially in terms of weight transfer. So that's why I tend to animate the COG or center of gravity first. So the center of gravity moves back towards the middle as both legs take up the weight. Now I've got to rotate this back. But how do I know if I'm going to get it right? Well, I can come over here and I can zero out the rotations. So I can select all the rotation channels and hit 0. And it'll go back to the default foot setup that was there before. This is important because when you're setting up or rigging your characters, you have to make your character controls so that whenever you put 0 in the controls, it returns to the T-pose, right? So the animator knows that when they're in trouble and they don't know how far a foot is twisted or rotated, they can just zero out that controller, knowing that it's going to go back to sort of a default pose, right? So how far down on the ground? Well, it's likely 0, right? And I'm just going to make some adjustments. Now, how far is that foot going to go out? I don't know. Well, let's go back and reference our poses. Okay, that feels good. So the foot swings to the inside and plants to the outside, right? And you can see how the foot curls are working, the toe curls are working, right? It just makes it look, it feels like it's slapping down, right? Okay, so that's cool. And let me finally bring this arm around and then bend it up. It's been dying to sort of bend forward. Same with bringing the shoulder forward. And then this arm is going back. Yeah, it's down a bit. Oh, that's too far, I think. I don't think it would go that far. Just a little bit. And he looks off balance, so let's bring him forward just a touch so there's better weight distribution there. And then we'll flip through our keyframes to make sure that's working correct. Now, here's the problem. We got our key poses working okay, right? So let's say we're sort of finished our animation. And I'm going to select all. And I'm going to go to my Windows Animation Editors Graph Editor. And one of the things I want to do at the very end before I send my animation to my animation director is to turn the splining back on, which is there, right? So we spline it back on, right? We've done our thing. We're finished animating. And then, oh no, look at that, right? The foot is going through the floor. All kinds of different kind of issues are happening. Well, it's not too bad, actually. But the arm fixes that I did, look, the arm is just staying way out there, right? Do you know why that I've lost my middle pose and the arm is acting unpredictably? Well, here it is, right? I have put, well, other than the changing of the rotate order, let's come back here and reset our rotate order thing here. So let's move this guy back. Oh, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Find out which kind of rotate order I would prefer to animate with on this guy here. But that's okay. So if we come back and I'm gonna select all the controllers and I'm gonna come back into the Windows Animation Editors Graph Editor, right? All of my controllers, let's see if I can do this so that you guys can see. So all of my controllers at this pose have a keyframe, right? Over here, only some of my controllers have a keyframe, not all of them, right? But we posed it, we were like, oh, super happy with that. Then we go to the last keyframe, right? By hitting the right angle bracket, and not all of my controllers have a keyframe. So what does that mean? It means that anything here that had a keyframe, like the torso control, will not change until it hits another torso control key. Do you see that? So I've missed that controller, and it's so easy to do. You watch me pose the character out. I'm super happy with that. But when I play it back, that torso controller is animating from here all the way to like the next time I set a torso key. Right? Oh my God, what a nightmare. So what I generally tend to do is when I get to this key, I might select all controllers and hit the S key. Because look at that. It locks that pose down. Locks it. Right? So I line up all my keys, every 10, 12, or 15 frames or so. Make sure all the controllers have a key. So all my key poses are working fine. Right? Now, there are some keys that are a waste of data. They're called linear keys. The top one here is an example of a linear key, right? So it hasn't changed at all, and yet it's got keyframe data. I'm not worried about that because we can always come over to our curves later and delete. It's somewhere in here. You can edit, delete your flat curves or curves that have no change in data at all and clean those out, right? So it's not a big deal, right? I'd much rather have my poses locked into place. Like, that's not my passing pose. It's not what I built. Like, that arm is totally wrong. There's a few things wrong with it. The torso is definitely wrong. So I can come in, I can readjust that torso again. It'll snap a key on there for me. Thank you. And then I can continue on, right? So any of the major keys, right? I want to make sure I hit the S key and it keys everything. So it locks that pose down. And when I zoom out of the graph editor, it makes the graph editor one of the easiest things to read on the planet because all your keys are lined up at intervals. You don't have to go looking for anything, right? So this is based on an old 2D animation technique where you design pose to pose what your characters are doing. And you take it from there. I just peeked over my calendar and realized, okay, I'm going over. I got a student meeting happening right now. But that's it. So, any questions about any of that? Oh, Julia, you said, I just realized that was probably the issue I had last time I animated. Good to know now. Which issue was that? Is that the lining up of the keys? Or is that locking down every controller? Yeah, locking. So, a best example would be, you've seen a good example, actually. I walked you through it with this character, right? So that's one of those rookie mistakes I used to make in my early careers doing animation, is that I would forget what controller had what keys where. So I'd have to do this thing where I'd go, okay, open the graph editor, look at that controller. Okay, it's got keys there. Okay, this has got keys there. Okay. And I'd have to go through and manually check every single one of my controllers. It's time consuming. Okay, so I didn't really get into the character stepping into frame, but I managed to hit all of the salient points of my process as an animator, right? So we talked a little bit about utilizing the grease pencil to pre-plan your animation, about acting it out, about setting up these quick selection sets, which I will improve on later, right? And lining up your keys in the graph editor. A passing thought about the dope sheet window and what's it's used for. Is that something we go over later on? Yeah, the dope sheet is not used as often these days, but it's a way of making blanket changes to keyframes. Now, I generally use it for my overall scene, right? So I don't mind popping into that real quick. Let me see if Bartos is in for my meeting today. I'm just going to segue away quick. This is important stuff, and I want to continue talking to you guys about it. So, no, Bartos isn't there yet. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so the dope sheet, right? So here's how I utilize it. And a lot of older animators, like myself, I suppose, are used to dealing with a dope sheet, but it gives you overall scene timing, right? You can break it down to individual sort of controllers like you can see here, and you can grab these and you can move them back and forth. But it's the same thing as working in a graph editor, kind of, right? It's just a little bit friendlier to look at. But there's also the time editor too. It's basically a case of this is a legacy timing tool that Maya has decided, or Autodesk has decided to keep in there. But the one thing I generally tend to do is I'll come over into my, is it in here? View, scene summary, right? So scene summary allows me to middle mouse button click and move absolutely everything. And I know that it's not going to damage my animation at all. It's going to grab everything in the scene and move the timing of it, right? So let's say I've got my keyframes down, and let me see if I can do that. So if I got my keyframes down in here, and I'm scrubbing back, and I'm like, you know, I don't like the timing of that, right? I can grab the scene summary sort of keyframe and move it back, and then move this guy back, right? And then I can scrub again, and I've made an adjustment to the timing. Something funny happened to the foot, though. It should grab everything. There's a bit of a pop in the foot. Well, we'll deal with that later, right? So that's what the dope sheet for. It's just for universal or global timing changes, right? Or anyway, that's how I use it nowadays, right? There's more functionality in it, but again, it's an older tool. Now, I've gone through that selection set stuff, and I talked about the S key. I talked about locking and hiding various different channels so that when you hit the S key, only those things that need a keyframe are there. You can see that the character setup artist has done a good job because that controller is only ever going to rotate in the Y. So we only ever have access to the Y rotation there. So that's good, right? So when I hit the S key, that's the only thing that will get a keyframe. Now, this is an old school way of setting it up. We can create what's called a picker page, which I'll kind of advance to next class. So that's one thing that is different, that is improved. We also have a set of tools that help us with timing and splining and all kinds of stuff down here. And it's an external tool called A-Tools. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We'll also talk about gimbal lock and how to safeguard yourself against gimbal lock, and also how to bake all this animation onto skeleton joints and get it into a game engine, right? So all that stuff is coming probably next class. Okay, any other questions at all about that? We covered a lot today, so. Okay, all good. I'll let you guys go, and we will catch up with you next class. I just need to let this sink in. Yeah, it's gone super fast, but I will, again, be going over and over again. The animation process is one of those things that you do the same thing over and over again, and it'll eventually get in there via osmosis. What does it want? Oh, where did oh my God. That closed down on me. Sorry about that. I popped it up because it's on the Twitch stream. So the Twitch stream will catch all of this stuff. Look at that. Personality disorder to know I've gone through that stuff and I talked about. Wow. Okay, well, maybe it doesn't understand the Canadian accent either. Yes. Oh, wait. I sent you an updated email. Yeah. When I saw your model, I was like, yeah, I did assess this. The train was an awesome train. So I should have emailed, you should have received an email with the updated Excel sheet, right? Yeah, so yeah, check your email. If you don't have it, just let me know. I'll just email it through to you again. By the way, a little bit of advice for you guys. Because of lockdown, because of remote learning, a lot of systems are a little bit, they were designed for in-person back and forth, right? So if you're missing marks or something, let me know. It might have gotten lost in the shuffle, or who knows, right? And I still have an opportunity to kind of, put those in and that kind of stuff, right? So let me know. As well, we had the situation where some of you submitted assignments on WeTransfer, other via F-Track, and others just by emailing me. So that's all like all over the place, right? So for this semester, I would like, well, you know what, we'll sit down, we'll talk about it. And I'll talk about how to effectively use F-Track. Now, the reason why I'm using F-Track is supposed to take the place of your written work, right? So as you're working on your assignments, you want to try to keep a daily log there so you don't have to write a big report for assignment 2, right? Well, actually, this is 100% coursework, right? So there's no written component for this one. So you're lucky there. Okay, I got to well and truly go. So I will talk to you guys later. Cheers. As per always, if you have anything that you want me to cover, please let me know. Just let me know, okay? And if this was a waste of time for you, let me know that too. I won't jump down your neck. I won't take it personally, right? Just let me know. All right. I will talk to you guys later. Cheers. And I'm going to kill the stream as well. Okay, I'll